Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. We are doing officially my second reading wrap-up video alone, and April was a really good month for me. I read 8 books, which normally I'm more in like the 4 or 5 range, but I don't know, I've just had quite a reading bug and have been reading some good books that are just quick to get through. So without further ado, let us dive into some of the books I read in April. So the first book that I read was Heartless Hunter by Kristen Ciccarelli. This is kind of a different type of fantasy than I usually read, and that is because this revolves around witches. Essentially, there's this world in which witches used to rule, and now they've been outcasted, and basically people are wanting to kill the witches. If they see any signs, they use blood as their magic, so they search them by finding their scars. And it follows the main character, Rune, who is a witch, but she's basically hiding in plain sight. She is working to save witches, basically, from being taken or from being killed. And the storyline is really good. There's a lot of like secrets that are uncovered, and then there's also a slow burn romance that goes with that with a mortal man. So kind of going with the theme of enemies to lovers, I guess. And yeah, I thought that this book was good. It was a bit slow, but I guess, you know, it has to like set things up. And some things were sort of predictable, but still it was a really good read, easy to get through. I gave that one 3.75 stars. So then I followed up with the second book, which is called Rebel Witch, again by Kristen Ciccarelli. And this one I thought was much better. Obviously, since it's a duology, a lot of things have to come to a close, so it's a lot more fast-paced and you're getting a lot more out of it. The secrets are being unveiled. There's a lot more like fighting happening, and the romance is getting a little bit spicier. So I thought that was good. I don't want to give too much detail away since it's the second book, but that one I gave 4.25 stars because I thought it just kind of completed the duology really nicely. It was a satisfying end, left no like unanswered questions really. So that was a really great duology. The second one I think must have just came out because it was still a little bit on the spendier side on the Kindle, but all in all, really good. Nice to just get 2 books in without having to read a bunch. So that was great. Okay, let's now move into the more cheesy romance. I usually throw in a couple of these here and there amongst my fantasy books just for a change up and because they're usually pretty quick to get through. Let me preface with years ago, like probably 2020 actually, I had been doing like a book club with some friends, and my one friend, Anna, had recommended the Bromance book club series, and so I read the first one years ago, and it was so good. I don't know why I didn't just continue with the rest of them. I must have just had a bunch of other things I wanted to read first, but I finally picked up the second one. And the second one is called Undercover Bromance, so book 2, and these are by Lyssa Kay Adams. Basically, the Bromance book club, all the books, it focuses on this kind of more high-profile group of men living in Nashville, and they all get together and they started this club that they call the Bromance book club, where they read like romance novels together and talk about them in order to like better themselves and in some way better their relationship with wife, girlfriend, or in order to get a girlfriend, I suppose. So the second book is following Braden Mack, and he is owner of a few nightclubs in the Nashville area and the sister-in-law of his friend Gavin, and her name is Liv. And Liv was working as like a patisserie or something and in a restaurant, and there's a restaurateur manager of like many different restaurants, high profile guy who was sexually assaulting a bunch of like female workers and paying them off to not say anything. And so Liv wants to take this guy down, and Braden helps her, and so most of the book is kind of about that, which I liked. But then their budding romance comes kind of over the course of them working together, and she didn't really like him to begin with, and so kind of learning his soft side through him kind of being more vulnerable via the bromance book club, I guess. Again, I don't want to give too much away, but this was my favorite. I will tell you about the other ones that I read, but this was my favorite of the bromance book club. I just really liked the premise of it, like how they came together and the storyline of like them taking down this predator that was high profile. So really good. I flew through this one. Like I probably read that one in like 2 days. So I gave that one 4.5 stars. The third one then I also read. This one's called Crazy Stupid Bromance. And this one follows another one of the friends, Noah, and he's like a computer security expert guy, like used to be a hacker and was in trouble with the law, but now he's, you know, he does well for himself. And he is best friends with this girl named Alexis, who owns a cafe, and she actually in book 2 was one of the victims of that restaurateur sexual assault, and she hosts like a bunch of things at her cafe for survivors and all of that. And she one day like finds out she has a sister because she never knew her father, but the sister is coming in and introducing herself because she wants Alexis's kidney for the father. And so it kind of follows how Noah's helping her through the emotions of that, and then, you know, at the same time they're both combating these feelings for each other, but they don't want to ruin the friendship, and so they're kind of tiptoeing around each other. And yeah, that one was really great too. I gave that one 3.75 stars. I think I just loved the second one so much that this one just didn't do as much for me, but still like a heartwarming story with romance as well. So, okay, so then I finished the series with Isn't It Bromantic? This is book 4. Now, technically there is a book 5. It's a Christmas one, but I'm waiting to read that one till Christmas. But this is like the primary like core 4 books. So Isn't It Bromantic follows Vlad, who is an NHL player in Nashville, but he's from Russia. Basically, we kind of end the third book on a cliffhanger about him and his wife, but essentially he grew up in Russia and was really good friends with this girl who they ended up then getting married, and they essentially married each other so that she could then go to the US with him. And then while they were married, he was playing hockey and she went off to do college, but there was never really any like romance that came from that relationship. And you kind of learn about why that is, but Vlad then gets injured and has to sit out the rest of the season. And so right after she had said she wanted a divorce because she was going to go back to Russia, she then decided that she would help take care of Vlad while he was recovering from his injury. And during that period, you just they get to know each other even more because they've been apart, and kind of come to realize that they actually do have feelings, and like why didn't they act on it. And there's some like there is a thriller kind of aspect to this one as well. Right away I wasn't sure I was gonna like this one as much, but I ended up actually liking it more than the third one, and so I gave this one 4 stars. Now we are hopping back to more fantasy. So I read When the Moon Hatched, and that is by Sarah A. Parker. This one is on Kindle Unlimited, as are the Bromance Book Club books, actually. I had seen a bunch of reviews on Goodreads, so I was like, okay, I'll read it. And it's a longer book, and there are dragons in it, so I was like, okay, sold, I'm into it. But this basically follows this girl, Rave, and she is a rebel assassin. And in the world, magic-wise, the magic comes from the 4 elements. They say gods, but it's essentially related to the elements, water, air, earth, and fire. Basically, the story then follows her journey getting revenge for people that were killed that she loved, and a lot of secrets being unveiled about herself that have been kind of blocked from her memory. And that journey alone is amazing. And then we're going to throw in, of course, some romance in there as well. However, I will say that's not the primary focus of the book, which I kind of liked, because I feel like a lot of the fantasy books I read are a little bit more romancy with fantasy, but I liked this one because it had a little more depth to the world. I mean, it had like a multi-page glossary in the back, with which honestly was really helpful, and I actually used whereas I don't usually use those when I read books that have them. So I would definitely recommend this one if you like fantasy. Dragons aren't like a super big focus, if that deters you, but still, all in all, really good. And I definitely was left on like a, oh my god, what's gonna happen next? So I can't wait for the next book, but unfortunately I think it doesn't come out till 2026, so that means I'll probably have to reread. And that one I gave 4.5 stars. So then I started reading Throne of Glass, and this is a reread for me. And if you haven't read Throne of Glass and you're into fantasy, you must get on that train. In my humble opinion, I prefer Throne of Glass over A Court of Thorns and Roses series. It's my favorite of all of the Sarah J. Maas series. I just think it's really thought out and done really well, and you come to love so many of the characters as well as hating a lot of the characters, and the world is just incredible. What I will say is this is the first time I've reread Throne of Glass, and I think it's just really hard for me because the first one is quite slow if you have read it, because you know what to expect in the later books, and the later books are like so fast paced. You're just like ripping through the pages because of all of the things that are happening. So I was just kind of like, okay, like it's, I mean, it has to set up the world and like it's setting up a lot of things, but it's just, I just kind of want to get to the other ones. But all in all, this one is a 4-star one for me, only because I know how good the other ones become. But I won't go into detail on Throne of Glass because I feel like if you haven't heard about it, you're like kind of living on a rock. No offense. But anyways, Throne of Glass, great. The final book that I read is Alone with You in the Ether, and this one was on my TBR for like quite a while, I think, and I just like, it wasn't so enticing that I felt like I needed to read it ASAP, but it's a short one, and so I was like, okay, I can squeeze in one more book but before the end of the month. So this one is, I guess, technically a romance novel. It follows these two people, a mathematician and a bipolar counterfeit artist, who is in the book going through some psychotherapy stuff, and they like meet at this art building, and they're completely opposite, but they find each other like so intriguing and having a lot of depth that they can't resist each other. And it's a lot of them conversing about like kind of over the head things and like a lot of like mental things. And to be honest, it was kind of confusing to follow. The middle of the book I like enjoyed, but the way it's written, it's kind of hard to follow when they're actually speaking to each other, when they're anticipating what the other person's gonna say in their mind, and that just kind of made it a little confusing for me to read, I guess. And then also the ending was just kind of like, I don't know, it just left something to be desired, I guess. There was no like, oh, okay. It was just kind of, I don't know. It wasn't great. I wouldn't really recommend it. Also, the way it started, like it sounded like it was a play. So I don't know. It's kind of all over the place. I gave that one 3 stars because I think it had a lot of potential in parts, but again, the ending just wasn't like what I didn't end feeling like really good about it, I guess. So those are my books for April. Very exciting. Lots of good ones in there with just one meh one. And yeah, I'm already continuing on with the Throne of Glass for May, with a couple other ones sprinkled in there as well, just so it's not all Throne of Glass. But let me know if you've read any of these and your thoughts on them, and if you have any book recommendations for me moving forward, I would love to hear them as well. And exciting, the next few vlogs are actually going to be in Iceland, so stay tuned for those if you're interested, and I will see you in an Iceland vlog very soon.